Joining me live now is American Iranian human rights lawyer and senior fellow at the Atlantic Council, Gissou. Thank you for your time on Sky News Australia. We're hearing more than 500 protesters have been killed during escalating resistance against the Iranian regime. Do you trust that figure, and how violent do you think this could get?
No, we actually have no idea how high the figure is because there has been a complete communications blackout in the country for more than 100 hours now. So it's been going on for several days, and that means that landlines are cut. Internet is cut. Some people can connect via Starlink, but a lot of those signals are jammed, and it's nowhere near the saturation you would need to be able to have the free flow of information. So we're just relying on a number of videos that show dead bodies piled in hospital, dead bodies at morgues where families are sort of grimly needing to identify their loved ones who've been killed, and also eyewitness reports, people who've told us that they saw security forces killing people and that people are collecting their dead. So we think that the estimates are actually going to be much higher, unfortunately, and probably much higher than the number of individuals who were killed in November 2019, when there were more than 1,000 protesters gunned down by security forces in Iran during nationwide protests then.
We're seeing many protesters targeting government buildings and monuments. Would you say these are people very much willing to risk their life for this cause?
Yeah, we see that there were tearing down of the statues of Qasem Soleimani, who used to be the head of the IRGC. We see that there are a lot of protesters that have been coming out onto the street in massive crowds. For several days, those crowds were huge, and they were saying anti-regime slogans and also talking about Reza Pahlavi, who's the son of the deposed monarch. So it was very much a message to the Islamic Republic that they don't want them anymore. And the thing is that when you go out and protest in Iran and you protest against the regime, you are risking death. You're either risking death through fatal force by security forces on the street, or you're risking death and being arrested and executed later, which happened to a dozen or more individuals during the last round of protests in 2022. And so it is a very serious thing to take to the streets and show your discontent. And so these people are taking a risk and risking it all to say that they don't want this regime anymore.
And the son of the former Shah, Reza Pahlavi, as you just mentioned there, clearly encouraging the actions of those demonstrators from afar in the US. How likely do you think this is that there will lead to some kind of change here? And if so, is he likely going to take on a position, a transition a position, at least if there's a power vacuum? What's your take on that?
Well, what I would say is that there were also Kurdish groups that were encouraging people in the Kurdish region to come out and protest. There are a number of labor unions that have told people to strike. So this is not only Reza Pahlavi calling people to the streets, but there are a lot of unified voices in the country asking for a change. In terms of what the Iranian people want, we do see that there are a lot of chants saying, invoking the Shah and talking about as a signal to Reza Pahlavi. But, we don't really know ultimately what Iran's political future will look like, because they've never had the space to be able to actually assemble political parties, to be able to freely express themselves. There hasn't been any opposition candidate that's ever run in the presidential election that they hold, which is really a selection. So we're going to need to give that space and time to the Iranian people to decide what they want. And I should note that Reza Pahlavi said that if he was leading a transition, that it would be a transition to democracy. So he himself has been saying that he is just going to be an intermediate figure that will bring the Iranian people to where they need to go, where they can exercise their choices.
And I want to get your take on those tariffs that the US is now going to impose on countries that trade with Iran. What impact is that going to have, do you think?
Well, it's interesting because I believe that there have been a lot of failures of multilateralism leading up to this moment. It is really such a shame that tons of Iranian youth need to hit the street to say what they want, to say that they don't want to be represented by this regime, and they need to lose their lives. We are at this moment because the world didn't take seriously the fact that Iranian people want a change and they do not want the regime. And so a lot of those countries implicated are countries that also played a role in that by continuing to have very cozy relations with this regime when the people of that country were clearly saying no in successive nationwide protests since December 2017. As for President Trump's policies, we know that he's definitely mercurial, to say the least. So I guess we'll see how the next few days shake out.
We'll see whether there's further action from the US too. Gissou, thank you for your time.